Not everything you see on the internet is real. Most of you know that. But the lengths and the depths that some will go in order to facilitate a trending topic online, well, that's the topic we dive in today as we examine a Nerdrotic attack and whether or not the bots are back. Hello folks, welcome back to the place that is explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve, and diving into topics you might not hear anywhere else. Today we have a fantastic panel, and we have a guest star. And we say star, we mean it, because this individual, this social media investigator, well, he has been on before, and he has blazed trails where no other has gone, helping us understand what's going on in the world of online interactions. Get ready for a deep dive that has great implications in regards to your favorite online personalities and whether or not a new campaign of attack is on the horizon. But it is time, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the attack, not on just one, but on many, perhaps even all of us. This is the headline about Nerdrotic, and it could be about many YouTubers and online personalities. Let's dive in, and then Master the TDS, you're going to walk us through all of this. I am excited. Out of thatparkplace.com, and by the way, generously given the opportunity to do this article by Master the TDS, and we are so appreciative. Social media investigator determines attack on Nerdrotic YouTube channel was part of a coordinated campaign. All right, here's what we've got. The Nerdrotic channel on YouTube is one of the larger pop culture pontificators on the web. The commentary is enjoyed by a wide variety of viewers. And by the way, I'll say Nerdrotic is enjoyed by something like 5 million views every single month. And of course, that fluctuates, but that's no small thing. The commentary is enjoyed by a wide variety of viewers, but not everyone is happy about that. A post from a mostly obscure X account went viral recently, and it was none too happy with Gary, the man whose voice you hear when you watch a Nerdrotic video. And you can see here that Grayson of Minute Nerd News said Nerdrotic is a pile of doggy doo, and we've allowed it to operate amongst us for far too long. Now, who is this person to declare whether or not people are going to be allowed to participate in the market? But how did an X account with only a couple thousand followers post a thread of hateful statements and suddenly blow up into a 5 million view trending topic across the internet? Well, it turns out that a social media analyst and investigator, who is here, by the way, Master of the TDS, has determined it might not have been just by chance. Now, here's a fascinating image that comes to us, and it says, the critical drinker is a piece of doggy doo that we've allowed to operate amongst us for far too long a thread. And that one has 11,000 likes, or excuse me, 11,000 views. It did not take off in the same exact way, but fascinating to see the exact same thing. So how exactly does the social media analyst, that's Master of the TDS, an investigator, think this post was made to artificially trend? Now, there's a paragraph here that talks about the sort of dark side of bots and manipulation of social media. Let's skip down because most of you understand this. And then I'm going to hand it over to you in just a second, Master of the TDS. A deep dive into the accounts supporting the original poster at a time when the account was largely unknown gives us a major revelation. Master of the TDS, who runs Gothic Therapy on YouTube, managed to discover that the various users following Minute Nerd News shared a very peculiar similarity. But in order to know what was going on, they first needed to develop what is called a node map. Now, here we can see this map of all the accounts that were following Minute Nerd News. And remember that Minute Nerd News was a very small account in terms of following in comparison to some of the big ones out there. But all of these dots represent accounts that were following. Down here is the exact same map, but with some options changed. And that's where I'm going to hand it over to you, TDS. Take it away and explain to the folks out there what it is that you discovered.
Well, first I want to give a shout out to A Price of Reason, because without him messaging me about this, I would not have even decided to look into this. I had seen the thread and kind of just like, another hater, you know, going after YouTubers. So it's a day that ends in Y. Basically, he messaged me and said, hey, this looks fishy. Could you look into it? And I said, okay, I'll give it basically to the person who I've been working with on the upper echelon team, and we'll see if they're, they can look it over. And they said, okay, I'll take a look. There's nothing in particular that we can't scan the exact tweet in question, but we can see, what's going on with the following. And with that in mind, basically we did it. And then he said to me, it looks normal, no problems. It looks like a normal interaction. And then he basically said, "Oh, can you call me?" And I'm like, "I'm kind of busy, but what's going on?" And he said, "You need to see this." So what basically you're looking at here, the first one was the one that was with normal interactions, and it looks fairly normal. If you graph an account with a node graph, you will find a very similar formation. The different colors represent different topics and different like communities coming together. So it looks fairly standard, fairly normal, a couple outliers here and there. But then if you were to go and remove only the private accounts, because we were noticing that we were getting a lot of 404 errors trying to map this because a lot of the accounts were private. And if you were to remove the private, we thought, okay, maybe the green section will go away. Maybe we'll get a little bit. And he wanted to show me because if you look at this, what we're looking at is all the organic, all the ones that aren't private. So you're looking at that and you recognize a node map, just to explain it to people who don't understand. Nodes are basically different. These nodes are different accounts. So each dot is a different account, and the lines between them are called edges, which connect these accounts together and show how they interact. So in this case, it's showing who they follow. So in other words, when we filtered out the private accounts that were interacting, the ones that didn't show any names, whatever, that's what we were left with. And we looked at
Can you explain why private accounts would be more suspect when it's a huge volume of private accounts? Can you explain why that sends to put up red flags about the authenticity of a trending topic?
Well, it's strange because, again, it's always possible that there is a group of people who are like doing things privately. I mean, yes, Twitter is a big platform. There's a lot of different communities. However, when you're looking at a post that's blown up and when you're trying to look at the retweets or whatever, and you can't really see anything, or there's less than they should, you have to start asking questions and going, what's going on here? Is there somebody like promoting this outside of it? Now, we went a bit further and we determined that the amount of people that were interacting with this post were at least in the sense, the private accounts that had responded to this one, we noticed that the amount was that the person had gained in regards to followers, right? Whereas exactly the same within a margin for error. It wasn't exactly the same, but we noticed that basically this account had gained 1,360 followers in the past 30 days. And before that, the history on Social Blade wasn't there. But when we checked to see, okay, how many accounts that we removed that were private, how many were there? What number? The number was 1,356, meaning that either 4 of the accounts were organic or 4 of them were bots and basically didn't have any of this kind of, they got suspended or removed or whatever it might be. So then we also discovered that he has a TikTok account, and we took a look at that as well. And with 200,000 followers, his views were abysmal. And when we looked at the Social Blade, what we noticed was that literally every single... He's never gained any followers. He's only lost followers. 100 followers every single week. And the amount of likes that this person had also remained consistent for months and months and months and never changed. A very round number. So again, you have to look at it and go, okay, something's wrong here. The numbers shouldn't be changed, should be changing or shifting or whatever. And when you look at that information and then you look back at the Twitter account, you kind of go, okay, so there's this account that's getting that has a ton of following and getting no views and no interactions and losing followers and not gaining any. And then we see this account that, again, popped up out of nowhere, gained a bunch of attention and stuff. And then, again, we don't really see all the accounts that are following him are private. Now, there are accounts that have followed him since then, I'm sure, that are organic. I'm not denying that. But you could see this, it's good to put on this thread. He got 4.9 million impressions. Okay. That's a lot. And there are ways to manipulate, impressions and stuff like that, which I'm not going to go into. But basically, this is clearly, with the evidence that we have from the TikTok compared with this, we can clearly say, hey, this looks like bots. And if it wasn't just the TikTok that looked botted and that gave us that, determination, the fact that the number of people who followed him since the account's history came up was literally within 4 followers of the exact number of accounts that were private, you have to look at that and go, that's very specific. That's very strange. So in that case, the only determination we can make from that is that this is artificial and this is bots.
Well, let me go to Lauren. Lauren is a securities expert. Lauren, do you want to weigh in on your thoughts on the difference in these nodes and sort of the suspicious activity? And by the way, folks, we're not claiming that the Minute Nerd News, or whatever the name of this account is, that they're aware of any botting or anything. It could be a third party that is completely operating independent, and they just looked for the perfect thread to go after a major online personality. We're not sure. But Lauren, do you find this compelling?
Yeah. The one thing I would say, though, is that I want to be careful about saying that I'm a securities guy. I'm not talking about financial instruments. My actual field is cybersecurity, and I'm a cybersecurity analyst. So
I was going to tell people that you were Rambo and you were actually like a military tactician.
Yeah, it's always tricky to draw conclusions, but it's sort of like when you start seeing patterns, and especially when I think the thing that would be compelling to me is that you have a continuing rate of decay that seems consistent when it comes to the subscriber loss, and when you have the overlapping numbers of the people that are private accounts that matches the number of subscribers that he's gained. That's not organic. Things don't operate in nature in that way. And so that definitely would raise suspicions. Again, it's always dangerous to draw conclusions, but I do think that this is something that you could look at and say, no, this isn't organic at all.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about why then. TDS, what do you think whoever was apparently, well, let's hold up on the why. I want to ask something else. TDS, before I ask the why, it appears to me that you actually tracked down the major accounts with huge followings that might have been involved with this. I know we're not going to name names, and smartly so. Can you tell us anything about how it was you discovered that there might be some big names behind this, behind the scenes?
Well, what we can tell you, I can tell you, is this: there are definitely some significant accounts that interacted with this account that were big enough that they kind of made you kind of look at it and go, why is this random account interacting with this person? And you can, through the program that we use to get these node graphs, which is called Gephi, we can actually set it to do certain things. So we looked at the different connections between them to see, okay, what are the biggest accounts that are interacting with it? So there are a couple big names that popped up. And because of that, you can kind of look at that and go, okay, do we have definitive evidence to pin it on these accounts? No, we don't. And that's why I'm not naming names, because again, if I'm not certain that this X person is behind it, I'm not going to say it. But I went with this and said this because there's clear evidence here that there are bots. But we can see for certain that these accounts are all interacting with this random account out of nowhere, and it looks kind of strange. And again, with that in mind, you can't help but look at it and go, that might be coordinated. To a degree, that there's something going on there. And then I found that post from the critical drinker, which the person, I will clarify, did say specifically in that post that they made the first post to mirror Grayson's post. So they specifically said they went out of the way to do that. But again, it's really strange. People go after YouTubers all the time. It's fine. It's a thing that happens as part of being on the internet. You can't avoid it. But when you see a post from an account that didn't have much following shoot up out of nowhere, it's possible that it could go viral. But when you see crazy habits or things going on behind the scenes, you can't help but ask questions.
All right. So let me ask you this then, TDS, and then I'm going to hand this to the rest of the panel. Your thoughts on why? Why might someone want to bot threads such as this and increase the visibility tremendously for major online personalities? What's the motivation?
Well, it's kind of obvious. I mean, I can't say for sure who's behind it, but if there's a lot of people who have become big voices in pop culture, especially Nerdrotic, other people like that. And when you have a voice in pop culture, especially when you're saying things that aren't exactly in line with what they maybe want you to say or whatever, you have to look at that and go, okay, these people are very not happy with us, because they're not. You can tell either when they block you on Twitter. I'm blocked by Entertainment Weekly. They're not happy with me, and I'm not even I'm a huge creator. So, you can tell that you definitely get under their skin. And with that in mind, you can kind of recognize that, again, like as you're showing here, Nerdrotic's got a huge presence. Only people have huge presence. If these people, whoever it might be, want to get rid of them, they want to stop them from talking, or at least get them talking with what they want them to say, they specifically will potentially go out there and bot these threads to make it seem more like it's getting more attention, to get it out there more. And
TDS, let me throw a theory at you. Let me throw just a quick theory at you. And by the way, TDS, could you tell everyone what the TDS actually stands for in your name? Because I think it's
I was going to mention that. So people who don't seem to know, people have asked that about my name. It actually stands for Master of the Total Defense Shogun. I used to do Yu-Gi-Oh stuff.
And you predate what TDS became.
Well, yeah, I used to. My favorite card was the Total Defense Shogun, which was a monster that could attack from defense position. So it was kind of like defense is the best offense, and I loved that concept. So I was like, okay, I am going to be the master of this card. I'm going to be the master of the Total Defense Shogun, TDS. So that was ages before TDS meant to be something else. And since then, I've been called it for over 10 years. I really can't rebrand it at this point. I just would get so confused. So I'm just going to live with it. But, it is what it is.
So Nerdrotic, and folks, you can go to socialblade.com and you can search out your online personalities and see what their online reach is in various platforms. That's what we're using here is socialblade.com. And Nerdrotic is pulling in 5.5 million views per month. Okay, so that's a huge following. But TDS, let me toss you this theory. What would you think of the possibility that someone with a huge account, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, who has a beef with Gary, might use bots to promote someone unwitting, such as Little Minute Nerd News or whatever the name of that account is, and thereby do it without getting dirt on themselves? Do you think that's a possibility?
Again, anything is possible. And people will say, the one thing people say is, oh, this person is only a child, or this is whatever. They couldn't possibly be botting. Wrong. You're all wrong. And I love watching people do that, because you're wrong, because it's not that difficult. I'm not going to tell people how to do it, mind you, but there are third-party services that sell these bot accounts in bulk for cheap. So you don't even have to have that big of a presence or a lot of money to be able to do this. You can do it fairly easily if you know how. So again, it could be anybody. It may not be someone behind a big industry. It could simply be a fellow creator who isn't getting the views that they want or whatever. Who knows? It's not that difficult if you know how to do it. But
so I have a question on this, looking at this from a cybersecurity perspective, because when you are the subject of an attack, the attacker is trying to obscure the source. That's why you're using multiple accounts and usually multiple disparate locations, because it allows them to hide. It looks like a sandstorm, and you're trying to pick out particular grains of sand. Because of that, it doesn't look like a pattern until you identify some characteristic that they all have in common so that you can spot them. And now you see the pattern. So my next question, based on that node map that you just had, are there other conversations that have gone around surrounding Nerdrotic and Gary and Critical Drinker around the same time that may not be the exact same content, but have similar looking node maps that would indicate this looks like the same pattern, possibly from the same accounts?
I would assume yes. We haven't done deeper dives into any of those posts, but I can tell you that YouTubers, it doesn't even matter if they're bigger or smaller, like they get talked about all day. Like there are people who make posts all the time. So the reason this one was particular interest is because usually those posts will do okay, right? And this one did way more than usual. So when you see an abnormality with a pattern as well, and then there's some interesting behavior going on behind it, that's also something to take a note of. So to answer your question, no, we haven't conducted any node graphs specifically of other conversations that were going on around the same time. But again, those conversations weren't necessarily getting enough attention to be of note or to be something we would have looked at. This was oh, I might as well give it a try and see if anything comes up, and it happened to deliver pay dirt. So
all right, well, let me hand it to the other panelists real quick. Guys, any thoughts on the attack on Nerdrotic and the potential for this to be done? I'll tell you what I think real quick, and we'll use this as a springboard for you guys. There's a real possibility now that bad actors can use bots to promote threads such as this, make it look like it's trending, and thereby get articles written about it. Because the access and attack dog journalists, excuse me, folks, the drive-bys, what they need is they need something trending. They can't go pick up a Twitter post with 12 views. They need it to look like there's some sort of massive following. And by the way, that's how they got rid of Gina. We're not saying that was botted, but that's how they got rid of Gina. Of course, she's not gone. They hate that, don't they? But let's start there, guys. The idea that now there's this new front to be able to take out online personalities of artificially generating, a synthetic invisible mob hating on them. What do you think of it?
When I first saw this, the article, I haven't watched the video yet. I've been meaning to. It's been a busy day. But when I first saw the link on X, the first thing I thought was, well, of course, they're after Gary. Of course, they want to attack Gary and Nerdrotic, Critical Drinker, and all the big channels because, and I've said this before several times, that this is becoming media. Okay, the YouTubers, these guys have way more influence than folks in the mainstream. And so is there going to be some sort of a coordinated attack that we're going to start seeing on YouTubers, where, Critical Drinker and Gary, they have a lot of sway. They have a lot of influence. Like I think Nerdrotic, he has now hit 1 million subscribers. Critical Drinker is over 1 million subscribers. So you start seeing these major channels with this big following. And now all of a sudden, we're going to start seeing more and more attacks, in my opinion, because these guys, they do what I call is they break the gaslighting. Okay. Because look, everybody's out there saying how everything is, wonderful and great in this culture war. We are in the culture war. Okay. So everybody's saying, no, don't listen to those guys. But then here comes, plain speaking, ordinary folks like Gary, like Critical Drinker, that just put it in such a perfect way. And these guys break the gaslighting out there in the culture war, where now, you can't fool these guys. Okay. You simply cannot fool the average person when they hear someone just breaking it down like Gary breaks it down. And so what do you do when you have somebody that's speaking against your philosophy or your agenda or whatever your message is? You have to attack them. And this is one way that they're going to try to attack them, and it only takes one good, solid voice. How many of us have said, man, you know what? Before I found these channels, I thought I was alone. Before I found all of these random channels out there, I thought, man, I'm looking at what Hollywood is doing, or I'm looking at what's going on in my world. And am I the crazy one? I'm seeing all of this negativity. I'm seeing all the things that they're doing to our culture, to our country. Am I the crazy one? And then you realize, no, okay, I stumble upon Nerdrotic. Okay, he feels the exact same way I feel. All right. And then we get into the community and other people. Okay, I'm not crazy. Okay. That's why I say they break the gaslighting. And it only takes one good, prominent voice. And if people, can discredit Gary with that long thread that guy put together and saying, oh, look who he is. He's a racist. He's this, he's that. They threw all the ist and all the phobes, and they threw all of that information and that ammunition in that thread. You might get a couple of people, oh, okay, this is just one of those guys. We can disregard him. Don't listen to him because this guy is giving us all the receipts on that. But I mean, like I did a video on that, and I'm like, before I even got to the third post in the thread, I'm like, all right, this guy, let me just break down how this guy is absolutely lying, and he's just making this all up. And so that's what it takes. You gotta understand that's why they're doing this, is because you have folks in this space, which is why it's so important to share, like, subscribe, and get all these voices out there, because the more prominent we become, now the mainstream is running scared because they see the power that we have over here on YouTube. That's the thing that I took away from that.
They're trying to get over onto YouTube. I'll just tell you. And in fact, when I saw this interview that one of the presidential candidates did, where he was gifted a Cybertruck, don't know if you saw it, from a 23-year-old YouTuber, I said, well, YouTube is now known. And folks, we have come to the end yet again. Another video of excellence in the can, but fret not yet, for more content is on the way 3 times a day right here on the Pro Channel. And oh, by the way, don't forget that we have partner channels as well. That Park Place, That Game Place, and That Pod Place. Folks, we certainly do appreciate your time. It is an attitude of gratitude every single day, because we know that you make the way possible for us to continue sending content out across these grand YouTubes. Folks, you can help us continue to do that. Click the like button, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And folks, until we meet again, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.